Hello and welcome to another video here at Stanley Gibbons, and I'm going to show you today how to write up a stamp collection. So imagine you've just bought some stamps and you've had them on the stock card from the dealer or the packet when you bought them, and you can put them in a stock book. They'll keep nice and safe all there, but stock books are quite plain. They generally have a plain background, white or black, with clear or frosted paper glassine strips, and really they don't elevate the stamps greatly. What you really should do with them is mount them up in an album such as this, and I'm going to show you some various different ways in which you can mount stamp collections. Now, there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's purely personal preference. Some people like to type them all up on pages and have them all lovely and neat and displayed. Some people just put them in very randomly, very haphazardly. And some people like to do it the old-fashioned way, handwrite them and have some illustrations and diagrams to accompany them. Some people like to do them on black paper and write with white ink to have that sort of contrast. But there really is no right or wrong way to do it. First of all, I'm going to show you some examples of stamp collections and give you the positives and negatives on how I feel and how sort of the trained collectors feel about how these collections have been mounted up. And I shall also show you my own stamp collection, just to give you an idea, and I have borrowed quite a few elements from all the different ways I'm going to show you. So first of all, this album here, it's quite an old album. This was made up probably round about the 1920s, and it's a collection that has passed through the hands of this family, and as you can see, it's pretty haphazard and random. There isn't really any order to it. Very simply handwritten, so you've got Uruguay, have some of the sunburst issues here, and then the other issues there. There is some semblance of order, possibly if they've recognised some sets or part sets, but again, it is very mixed. You've got mixed, mint and used, all on the same page. There really isn't much order to it at all. So again, you look at Brazil, it's very similar. There really isn't much going on for it. What are the positives about this sort of collection? Well, the positive side is that you can clearly see all the stamps, and quite economically as well, it's nearly filled the entire page. The negative side of things, it does look very cluttered. It does look very messy, but then some people are like that they might want to collect and just stick it all into their arm haphazardly. But again, sort of more professionally and more sort of pleasing to the eye, it would be better to have some semblance of order. I'm going to show you a collection now that's round about the same age, but slightly different. This collection was made up from the 1920s to about the end of the 70s when the original collector passed away. And he was a big fan of writing up his stamp collection for himself and also for the local society. And he, if I find a good page, was quite methodical in the way he did it. And he collected Great Britain. As you can see, there's quite the big difference. We've got a penny black on an entire letter here, and it's all very well ordered, lots of things underlined, and it's very neat. And again, it's all handwritten as well. So this is the only way how you could do it back then, unless you had the luxury of a typewriter. And again, you could just see the unbelievable difference between this one and the previous one. Again, they're around about the same age, give or take. And it just shows you the very different ways which you can approach it. The original collector for this also went as far to commissioning little illustrations of the stamps. So he was showing the re-entries on the penny blacks and the differences. And again, he has these little illustrations here which highlight those varieties. Again, it's adding extra detail, it's adding extra detail and more to the story of these stamps, and just providing a sort of extra tidbits to the collection, sort of a bit like illustrations to a book and things. It just adds a great deal of character. And let's see if I can find another page. So this is a page here, all of imprimatas for the penny reds. And again, very differently laid out, very well ordered. So that was the only way you could do it for a number of years. And of course, as time went on, stamp technology changed, whereas originally when people were mounting up stamps, you had to physically stick them into the albums, which seems quite a horrid thing to do, but that was the way you could do it. And then people started to use sort of gummed paper tapes and also the margins from some of the stamps. So if you look at some very old albums, you can sometimes see the stamps are hinged into the pages using the margins from the sheets of stamps. But as time moved on, the peelable hinge came along, and then hinges were around for a long time. And then in the 1950s, you had hingeless mounts. And of course, hingeless mounts made things an awful lot easier. There were little plastic pockets, which meant you could put the stamps in without having to hinge them. And of course, this is when the great unmounted craze began. Now, this album here, I have to claim a slight bias because it's my own. And I have borrowed a couple of things from the older style of collections because I quite like those handwritten ones. Now, my own passion for collecting is India, so I shall show you the first page. We've got some half annas here. And again, they are put, rather than using hinges, they're done in the plastic mounts. Black backed. You can get them clear, but I like the black ones, though they add a bit more contrast. And again, quite well ordered. You've got some descriptions and more notes as well with the stamps, just to provide extra detail and that sort of thing. I do also use hinges. I used hinges for these ones because they didn't quite fit the mounts as very neatly. And of course, these are the Lady Minto Fate issues, which were quite famous. And they are hinged onto that page. Again, I just think they look nicer rather than having the black background on there. But again, stamp collecting, it's a very personal hobby, which people seem to forget, particularly if you're, say, collecting and putting albums in printed albums, because it's all done for you. With writing up your own stamp collection, it's endless possibilities. Let's show you how most collectors nowadays do it for more professional, say, for if you're exhibiting or the slightly more modern collector. Now, this is a collection here, in a rather larger album, quite different, of Oxford College and Cambridge College stamps. And the collector for these took the time to use his stamps and print them out through domestic printers, and he's typed it all up on the computer and then had it printed on these pages and then mounted the stamps in clear mounts. So again, clear mounts are, I personally like the black ones. They provide a bit more contrast, but some people like the clear mounts because they do look like the stamp is floating, and I think it's sort of the closest thing you can get to a hinge without using one. And this collector also collected Indian states, and this is his sort of secondary collection, and he has gone to great detail and at length with this one as well. So it's sort of got a best of both worlds, really. It's incredibly clear, very concise, and as you can see, he's used much larger mounts to accommodate blocks. Obviously, there were a couple of blank pages where he obviously never got those ones, but it is primarily full. So again, he's separated them all out into the various different types, got some proofs. There's a reprinted die proof, and again, more sheets, and I believe there's some covers here as well, which we shall find. And some people like to mount covers in the mounts themselves, whereas some people like photo corners. As you can see, the photo corners have been cut at the corners, so if over time they warp or anything, they won't damage the corners, and also it gives the item a bit more wiggle room as well. And the corners are self-adhesive, you stick them on the back, and then you just very gently tease the corners in to under them. So again, you see you've got quite a bit of give as well, and they will sit there quite happily. It saves you having to hinge them, and it saves you having to find a mount big enough. And also you can use it for much larger items, say as for sheets or for postal notices or presentation sheets, miniature sheets, that sort of thing, and that works very well, but I primarily use it for covers. Now, of course, that stamp collection, my stamp collection, is mainly for my own personal gratification. Not many other people tend to see it, but say if you're exhibiting, you generally don't necessarily have the collection left on the album pages nowadays. You tend to put them onto exhibition pages, which is something you can buy from us, and they generally come in about an A4 size and A3, single and double. And this is an example here of a collection that has been mounted up on an exhibition panel for exhibiting. This is part of the collection from one of my colleagues who works here, and it is all done on PowerPoint and then printed off onto sort of card, A3 card, and then on a domestic printer, and then the stamps applied on in clear mounts and photo corners. So again, it is very detailed, lovingly displayed, and all very well sort of thought out and planned. And of course, as you'll notice, areas of interest and note have been highlighted in red boxes. So again, to further emphasize and assist the viewer when they're viewing such collections. And also, this collection did win a gold medal when it was displayed in 2019. But of course, that sort of exhibition is for global and international exhibitions. But if you're just exhibiting for a local society or club, you don't necessarily have to go to the same lengths. But again, it's all about personal preference. It's all about what you want and how you want to display your collection. I personally quite like the older styles. But then again, I know if I was to ever exhibit, I'd have to probably sit down with PowerPoint and do something very similar to how my colleague did it, because that is how it is done nowadays. And it would take a rather long time to handwrite all that just to have it on display for maybe a few days at a stamp show. One disadvantage to handwriting a collection is that, of course, if you make a mistake, it's very difficult to get rid of it unless you start again. And of course, that can be a bit wasteful depending if you're on what album pages you're buying, because some can be quite expensive. A classic example here is in my own collection. I have these sets of Indian specimens, all the same type of specimen, and of course then later on in my collecting I found the other one that goes in the set. So of course now I've got to completely rewrite the whole page and do it again. But of course you have to do something similar if you're typing it out, such as like this on the computer and things. But again, it'll be a lot easier because you'll already have the template, you'll already have this hopefully saved to your computer, and all you simply have to do is rejig it slightly to add it in. So of course this is slightly more convenient than handwriting it, but I just like the feel and the look of handwriting collections. I hope this has given you some good ideas and pointers to how to mount up your own stamp collection. You're elevating it from the shackles and the boundaries of a stock book and placing them on album pages will really pay off in dividends. And do it how you want to do it. That is my big point here. If you like it handwritten with hinges, handwrite it with hinges, or handwrite it with mounts, black or clear. And if you want to do it on your computer and organize it all out, measure it all out, and then print them off and stick the stamps in, you can do that. Or if you just want to buy a printed album, say one of our printed albums for the Commonwealth and the Georgia 6 or Great Britain, or a Darvo album, you can do those as well. There is no right or wrong way to do it. But I hope these pointers will give you some idea of how you can go about mounting up your own collections.